Hi, I'm Dr Ray Middleton and this is a very brief introduction to the Power Threat Meaning Framework. A number of different social and social psychological models and frameworks have been developed to help us understand people. Models and frameworks are a kind of lens for looking through to help our understanding when we're trying to help people. For example, the medical model tends to see people through the lens of health and illness and would encourage someone to look for illness by looking for symptoms, and those symptoms could support giving a diagnosis of a disorder, and typically some treatment would be prescribed for the disorder. So that's the medical model. An alternative to the medical model is the biopsychosocial model, which would encourage someone to look for the physical and biological factors, the psychological factors and the social factors that contribute to someone's mental and emotional difficulties. Another new framework, published in 2018 by the British Psychological Society, is the Power Threat Meaning Framework. This framework specifically considers the role power and trauma plays in understanding people's difficulties and their personal stories. Remember, models and frameworks are attempts to simplify complex information about people in order to help us all make sense of it. They can help the information someone shares not to feel overwhelming to them or to the listener, as we can locate each piece of information shared within a wider picture of a framework. So frameworks can help to contain and explain what we are hearing. The Power Threat Meaning Framework is a new way to understand why people sometimes experience a range of distress, confusion, fear, despair and troubled or troubling behaviour. It's an alternative to the medical model, which is based on psychiatric diagnosis. The framework can be used to understand any human being, not just people accessing mental health services. The framework considers the role different kinds of power have in people's lives, the types of threat posed by misuse of power, and the ways people learn to respond to threat. Traditional mental health practices sometimes call these threat responses symptoms. The framework looks at how we make sense of difficult experiences and how messages from the media and wider society can increase our feelings of shame, self-blame, isolation, fear or guilt. An overview document explaining the Power Threat Meaning Framework is available free to download from bps.org/PTM-overview. The framework can be summarised in 6 questions, which can help us think about ourselves or someone we're working with. The questions can also be used to think about a social group or a family. The first question is, what has happened to you? This is asking about how power has or is operating in your life. The second question is, how did it affect you? Or what kinds of threats does this pose? The third question is, what sense did you make of it all? Or what is the meaning of those situations and experiences to you? The fourth question is, what did you have to do in order to survive? Or what kinds of threat responses are you using? The fifth question is, what are your strengths? Or what access to resources and power do you have? And the sixth question is, how might we pull these responses from questions 1 to 5 together to fit into a personal narrative or story that makes sense and is believable to you? These 6 questions form the basis of the Power Threat Meaning Framework. They can be used as a way to help create more helpful narratives or stories about someone's life and the difficulties they're currently facing and have had in their past. Instead of seeing themselves in a negative story as weak, deficient or mentally ill, they can create a new, more positive personal narrative about their life journey. The framework can help make connections between social factors such as injustice, poverty, discrimination or inequality, and personal traumas such as abuse, and the resulting emotional distress or troubling behaviour can be integrated into this story around this framework of these 6 questions. The framework describes different strategies people may use, from automatic bodily reactions to deliberately chosen ways of coping with overwhelming emotions. In order to survive and protect themselves and have their core needs met, people may develop these threat responses or strategies to survive. It suggests a range of ways that may help people to move forward in their life. For some people, this may be therapy or other standard interventions, including if they help someone to cope, psychiatric drugs for some people. For other people, the main need will be practical help and resources, such as housing and income, alongside maybe peer support, art, music, exercise, nutrition, community activism, things like this. Underpinning all this, the framework offers a new perspective on distress, which takes us beyond just focusing on the individual to see that we're all part of a wider struggle for a fairer society. Power threat meaning is an overarching framework which is not intended to replace all the ways we currently think about and work with distress. The aim is to support and strengthen good practice which already exists, while also suggesting some new ways of understanding and helping people.